We are fortunate to have with us today Randy Pausch from Carnegie Mellon. Originally, he got his education from Carnegie Mellon, then he was professor here for a number of years. He's laid a lot of trails. He serves as a role model to many junior faculty, myself included. And we still try hard to follow his footsteps. His research is very interesting. He does a lot of work for Disney and engineering, and maybe towards the end he talks about that for a couple of minutes. But today is all about time management. The best stuff I've ever heard about the subject, so I thought I should share that with him with you. So without any more delay,
okay, thanks. It's very nice to be back. Giving a talk on time management with Alf Weaver in the audience is like giving a talk on surviving the Johnstown flood with Noah in the audience, I think. So I learned a lot of this from Alf and some other senior faculty members in the computer science department. Before I start, just because it's always good to start a talk with something completely unrelated, I'm going to pass out something that you can... this is completely unrelated to the topic, but it's been getting a lot of airplay, so I thought I'd mention it. I guess everybody knows that there's a buzz going on that everybody wants undergraduates to work in groups. Have you heard that going around? Employers say, I want people that are used to working in teams, cross-disciplinary projects, all that. And I talked with a bunch of undergraduates and sat in a bunch of design meetings and found out that there's a whole set of mechanical skills they just don't have about how to have a meeting that doesn't end in a fist fight. All right? And so this is just a really useful little sheet. This is also off my webpage, but I thought I'd hand it out to you. And these are things that I hand undergraduates before they have to go do a team of 4 students attacking a project. And I developed this in a course where I had 50 students who were equally drawn from computer science, fine art painting, drama, and design. So I had to get those people to work together. And they're just, to give you an example of one of my favorite ones, a very concrete thing that you can tell somebody who might not know at 19, when you're having a design discussion and you've got 2 different ideas, get them on a whiteboard and give them names. And the names should be things like the red idea and the green idea, not Susie's idea and John's idea. Because once you get them up there and they have labels and you can refer to them and nobody's ego is attached to them, it's a lot easier to cross-pollinate and nobody has to feel like their idea lost. So there's just some mechanical tips there, so I thought I'd pass that out. Completely unrelated. Okay, so what is related? What is related is I'm going to spend the next 45 minutes, so we'll go till 3:20 max, talking about time management. I got interested in time management a long time ago when I realized that I wasn't going to find a way to make more time. One of my favorite quotes comes from Ben Franklin. Remember that time is money. Sometimes I do the experiment before this talk where I go around and ask a couple people surreptitiously, would you stick around for a half an hour and help me clean up? We got to move some chairs or something. I make up some excuse related to the talk. And amazingly, 3/4 of the people I ask will say yes. But if I ask the same question in the form, I've forgotten my lunch money. Would you give me $10? This is not a loan. You're not going to get it back. And I'm an invited speaker after all. And you know what? People won't pull $10 out of their wallet. There's something in our society that says, I don't give you some of my time, particularly if I'm not, some of my money if I'm not going to get it back. It's just something we don't do, right? Despite all the rumors you might hear, panhandling is not a lucrative career, right? And it certainly isn't if you walk up to somebody and you're well-dressed. And having attempted to panhandle undergraduates, they never give a faculty member any money. However, we're very cavalier about giving away our time. And the thing I want you to keep in mind is that time is like money, and it must be explicitly managed. How many people here right now, without doing any thinking, know what they are worth an hour? Very few people know what they are worth an hour. Everybody who comes to work with me in my research group is forced to do that calculation right off the bat, and it's a lot more than you think. All right? Remember that if you are working in a company and you make $50,000 a year, which last time I checked, by the way, this probably correlates here. That's about what the undergraduate computer science majors are making after a bachelor's. You know, about $50,000 a year. All the non-CS people in the audience can go, ugh! If you earn $50,000 a year, you cost your company $100,000 a year because you've got to multiply by 2 for overhead and blah, 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 blah. So once you figure out that you cost $100,000 a year, it starts to look real silly to spend a week of work implementing a piece of software that you could have bought for $500. In fact, that looks real silly. And even in universities, we're starting to figure this out. A graduate student at Carnegie Mellon costs me $48 $48,000 a year as a research faculty member. I have to go out and raise $48,000 from NSF or some other source for each year of each PhD student. So each student I admit, if they're going to spend 6 years, is a close to $300,000 personal investment. So, you know, I don't get into these pissing matches about should we spend $5,000 instead of $3,000 to make their computer be a high-end laptop instead of a high-end desktop. Because if that kid works 4 extra days during the year, I've almost gotten my money back. Right? And I make sure that they do. So you got to manage your time explicitly like your money, and you got to realize that these are in some sense fungible, and you should have a real quick calculation of how much does it cost for me to spend a half a day on that problem. Okay? The other thing about this talk is that most of this will not make much sense later until you've thought about it for a while and you've been in some situations and you've made some trade-offs. The World Wide Web has the handout here that you've gotten is not related. On my World Wide Web page, which is, again, www.cs.cmu.edu/Pausch, right off of that, all of the notes that you're going to put on the overhead are there. So you don't need to write down anything that's on the overhead slides. They're all there. Okay? So I've just saved you some time. All right? This talk is intended to be faculty, and I don't know about versus, but faculty and graduate students and undergraduates, just to poll the crowd. How many people here are faculty members? Okay, small number. How many people here are graduate students? Good, perfect. How many people here are undergrads? You are ahead of the curve just by being in this. Hi, James. How the hell are you doing? That is a smart, efficient guy. One of the saddest things about leaving Virginia was that I couldn't bring him with me because you can't take undergraduates. It's the law. One good thief is worth 10 good scholars. In fact, one good thief is worth 10 of anything. Never build or do anything when you can just steal it. Almost all of this talk is shamelessly stolen from these two sources. Those are not, in fact, those are good sources to have had me distill them for you. The two books I highly encourage you to go out and buy are The 1 Minute Manager, which some people describe as drivel, but I describe as the best 30 minutes you're going to invest this year. It's told in the story of a parable about a good manager. Heavier reading, less value per page is The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Okay, this again, these will be found in the self-help section of your local bookstore. So they're right next to, Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, and things like that, and How to Screw Your Boss and Not Get Caught or whatever. These are useful just because they talk somewhat mechanically about some tricks. Being an engineer by trade, a computer scientist, I tend to look for mechanical tricks more than philosophy, but you'll see some of both in this talk. I have a stack of both of these books in my office. I pay for them out of my own pocket, and any undergraduate who walks in the room can have one. They have to promise to read it if they take it. And I think it's a good investment on their part. Okay? What am I going to spend the time on? We are going to talk about why is it important, how do you do goals, priorities, and planning, to-do lists, which is you'll get your money's worth in 1 2-minute section, right? The whole 45 minutes will be worth it in there. I'm going to talk a little bit about the office. That will be mostly applicable to the faculty, so I'll do that very, very quickly. How to schedule yourself, how to delegate. And I want you to listen to that from whatever perspective you're in. Delegation is from someone to someone else. And everybody in this room is on at least one end of that stick. How to deal with meetings, and the short answer is don't. How to use technology, and then I'll close with some general advice. At any point, if you have any questions, just put your hand up or just shout out. Right? The more interactive this is, the better it is. So don't let me just steamroll ahead if there's a point you'd like something on. Okay? Now, why is this important? The best phrase I've heard so far is the time famine. This is not a little problem that's going away. If you understand the famine situation in Africa, you realize that no matter how many trucks of food you send this year, 5 years from now, a lot of people are going to starve to death in Africa. It is a constant chronic famine situation. In fact, the only thing that will keep people from starving to death in Africa is dying from AIDS first. All right? It's a chronic problem. It's not going to get better. In the context of that, of course, all our piddly time management problems don't seem so bad now, do they? All right? What is bad is that bad time management leads to stress. The title of this talk that I really ought to do it is How to Decrease Zantac Sales. All right? Or Malox or whatever the Alpha and I are smiling, yes, okay. I got tenure and I never took an antacid in 6 years. I worked 6 months at Disney Imagineering. I had a bottle of Malox in my desk drawer. I understand what stress is like. This is life advice, not just job advice, because if you are stressed because of bad time management, this could lead to lots of ugly problems in your personal relationships and your quality of life. All right? So, The problem is really bad, and by some estimates, people waste about 2 hours per day. Now that's a vague thing, but these are people that go in and monitor people in their offices. If any of these seem at all familiar, you're in the right room today, all right? And of course, all these things snowball. They just get worse, because if things are cluttered, you can't find things, it takes longer, it just gets worse and worse and worse. It spins out of control. And as Hans and Franz used to say on Saturday Night Live, hear me now, believe me later. People say, gee, you're so successful. That's why you manage your time well. And I can assure you it is the other way around. If you manage your time well, you become successful. So the notion of setting out to do the right things is one of the things I want to place into your mind. Doing things right is not as important as doing the right things. All right? You don't want to polish the underside of the banister for 6 hours. You can be the best underside of the banister polisher in the world. As a researcher, and this is why your advisor is so important if you're a PhD student, if you are working on the wrong problem, it really, truth be known, doesn't matter how good a job you do. Because who cares if it's the wrong problem? If you're working on the right problem and you don't do that great a job, but nobody else found the problem, you are the world's expert. All right? And I can't imagine anyone for whom that lever is as important. Maybe the CEO of a major corporation, but for a PhD student, picking the right problem is everything. All right? Look at everything in terms of a benefit-cost analysis. One of my favorite extreme examples of that is Lou Holtz, the famous football coach, once made a list of the 100 things he wanted to do before he died. And then every day when he woke up and he was working on other things, he said, really, if I've only gotten 3 of the 100 done in the last 2 years, why am I not working on that list? Which I think is an interesting approach to life. Right? If there are 100 things you really want to do before you die, why would you go 6-9 months without getting one of them done? I mean, why is this little piddly stuff creeping in the way? So every time you're working on something, ask this fundamental set of questions. Why am I doing this? What is the goal? Why will I succeed? And my favorite, what happens if I choose not to do this? Right? Exactly how bad is it if this doesn't get done? All right? Now, some PhD advisors in the audience are going, oh, geez, he's giving them an excuse to not do something I told them to do. Well, yes, but only if they learn the habit of coming back to you and saying, it's going to take me 3 weeks to do this. And there's an opportunity cost. I could do something else with those 3 weeks. And once you think of it not as, woohoo, I don't have to do this thing I'm responsible for. Instead, you say, I go back and talk with the person and say, it's going to take this much time. How could I do something else for you in the case of the advisor? Salesmanship is important. All right? And think about what I can do with those hours if I invest them in something else. Most of you probably know about the 80-20 rule. All right? 20% of the things that you do are going to have 80% of the impact. Now, the hard part is knowing which 20% of the things that you do that those are. And I don't have anything to tell you about that, is that it takes judgment and experience. This is why you pay somebody who's been in a business for 20 years a lot more than a rookie who's smarter, is because the person who's been around for 20 years knows what that 20% is. Experience is really valuable. All right? Another sort of cliche in the time management biz, failing to plan is planning to fail. If you say, I'm not going to plan and structure and organize my time, you're dead. Right? It's just, I have met almost no people in my life, for example, who don't have a day timer and are successful. I've met a few rare exceptions, but I would not model myself after them. And planning is something you do at multiple levels. I get up every morning and I look at what I'm going to try to accomplish that day. Once a week, like clockwork, I look at what I'm going to try to accomplish during the next week. Some people do that the last hour at work on Friday. Some people do it the first hour of work on Monday. And really important is to set semester goals. How many of the PhD students in this room can really give me a crisp list of things they intend to accomplish by the time the holidays hit? A really crisp, okay, maybe 1, maybe 2, right? Now, if I ask you to write them down and mail them to me and I send you mail in December, okay? Will that list have squeezed out all the piddly stuff that comes in between now and then? Right? Take that list and put it on the wall in front of where you sit. And every time you're working on anything, say, trade this off against those major goals, because the major goals have to be focused. All right? How do you write down these things you want to accomplish? Here's a bunch of advice that, like the one-page handout, somebody looked at the one-page handout that I gave out, and they said, gosh, this looks like something you ought to be covering in kindergarten. All right? And my reply was, that's correct. It should be covered in kindergarten. As soon as I have evidence that's covered in the K through 12 curriculum, I'll stop teaching it to 18-year-olds. And in fact, as soon as I have any evidence that it's learned by the end of the PhD curriculum, I'll stop handing it out before faculty meetings. So here's some advice, straight as I give it to my 10-year-old nephew, who looks into his room when I say it's time to clean up your room, when I'm the bad cop babysitter. And he says, it's too much work, I can't do it. Which is a lot like what I hear from a lot of students. I can't do that, it's too big. And big tasks are scary. That's why you must learn to cut them up into little tasks. And it's just like a kid. I say to Christopher, my nephew, okay, so the room is way too much to clean. I understand that. Can you get everything off the bed? He looks at me and goes, yeah, I can do that. And he goes and he gets everything off the bed. And I say, can you get everything off the dresser? And he says, yeah, I can do that. And I can break it down to about 5 pieces for him, none of which are daunting to him. The other thing is, when you break things up into pieces, do the ugliest one first. There's an old saying that if you have to eat a frog, don't spend a lot of time looking at it first. And if you have to eat more than one, don't start with a small one. All right? If you do the ugliest thing first, you'll be amazed how fast the rest of them just do themselves. All right, here's the slide. In fact, if you leave after the slide, that's probably a good strategy. I don't know. This is the 4-quadrant to-do list, stolen blatantly out of 7 Habits. Most people keep their to-do list in a linear order, and oftentimes, if it's sorted, it's either sorted in the order of I wrote things down, or it's sorted in the order of what's due next. Right? So all the things that are on fire and due this afternoon are written first, and I might resort them, but it's the external world is putting these pressures on me. Try this experiment for a 2-week time period. Write down your to-do list in a 2-by-2 quadrant. So these are the things that are due soon. These are the things that are not due soon, right? Standard 4-by-4 quadrant. Which one of these 4 quadrants do you think you should work on first once you've got all the stuff written down? This is not a tough quiz. How about this one? All right? So we do that one number 1. So, which one do we probably never get around to? Okay, that's good. So that's the one we're going to do number 4. We're never going to get to that. Let's admit it. All right? Now, which one of these 2 quadrants are you going to do next? This is the mistake that everybody makes, and they all pay for it in spades. What we all do is we sit there and we stay until 2 in the morning in our office working on the thing that doesn't matter a damn just because it's due tomorrow morning. All right? Meanwhile, our long-term goals, like ever getting our degree and getting the hell out of graduate school, slide farther and farther out of our view. But damn, that banister looked good. Okay? So if it's not due soon, but it's important, do it second. So that if something gets squeezed out, it's something that's not important. And you will know. Now, I'll talk more about commitments, and I'm not arguing that you unilaterally don't follow through on your commitments. I'll talk more about that later. Time management is not about rudeness or selfishness, despite what you may have seen in the popular press. It's like assertiveness training. It just spun out of control. You will have reached the Zen state of time management when you find yourself saying, this thing is due tomorrow. It's going to take me the next 2 hours. I'm just not going to do it. I'm going to take those 2 hours and invest them in something that's due in 2 months that will make a big difference in my life. I did that long enough, over a long enough period of time, that I got enough research grant money that I was able to hire a full-time assistant. Okay? I would have hired Kim, but then Alf would have killed me. So I found someone who was the closest approximation that I could find to Kim in a city of 3 million, and she's like 0.7 Kims. So I did well. And this just snowballs because now I have someone who takes care of all these things for me. And I send her electronic mail, and they get taken care of. And I have all this extra time. Right? I haven't stood in front of a photocopy machine in probably a year and a half. How many faculty members here can say they haven't been in front of a photocopier in a year and a half? You realize you're getting paid one hell of a lot of money to do work-study work. Right? When I was on the faculty here, I attempted, with no success, to say that faculty members should not be given copy cards. And that if the faculty member couldn't get the stuff done in time to get it to the secretarial staff, then they would have to walk over to Kinko's and pay their own money. I got nowhere with this, like I said. Let's talk about paperwork. But I would routinely go by the photocopy machine and calculate for someone what the cost of the copies was in their time. All right. Paperwork. Clutter is death. It lends to thrashing. Keep your desk clear. Focus on one thing at a time. Now, I do know people who can have a completely cluttered, messy office with everything's in piles and fallen over and they can't find a damn thing, and they have gotten tenure and they've succeeded and they're world experts. The only thing I can say is, God, just imagine how much more they could have done if they hadn't been completely disorganized. Right? The fact that some people are so smart they can overcome bad organization does not imply that bad organization is a good thing. Right? There are world-class sprinters who can put 20-pound weights on their back and run faster than I can. That doesn't make putting 20-pound weights on before the 100-yard dash a good idea. And if you look around, you will notice that most of the people who win those races are not wearing backpacks. And if you look closely, you will notice that most of the successful people in life actually have well-controlled spaces. Right? If they have clutter, it is well-defined, and it's not messing with their filing systems. All right? A good file system is absolutely essential. There's, one of the mantras in time management is touch each piece of paper once. When it comes into your desk, you handle it, and you handle it right now. This is absolutely the same for electronic mail. If you are using your inbox as your to-do list, you're probably in a lot of trouble, because every time you go to read your electronic mail, what do you find? 278 messages. Oh, that's a real pick-me-up when you're looking to work hard. The first thing you need is that thing smacking you in the face saying, oh, no matter how hard you work, you won't be able to make any real progress because there's way too much stuff. Well, it's the same visual signal if I walk up to my office desk and it's this deep in crap. Now, if I take all that crap and I put it in a file cabinet, and that's why I say touch each piece of paper a maximum of 2 times. If you're not going to handle it right now, put it in a file, put it in the file cabinet, put something on your to-do list, and then when you walk up to your desk, you say, ooh, I've only got this one thing to work on, and I'm just like my nephew Christopher. Because that whole pile of stuff makes me go, I can't do it. But that one thing on my desk is like, oh, I can whack on that thing. Right? I'm bigger than it. Right? That's a good sign. When the pile of stuff is bigger than you, it's really hard to motivate. Right? Here's a really good trick. When somebody sends you this, back when people used to write on paper, okay, there were these things called typewriters. Okay. People would send you business letters. A business letter is great because you just write the answer to the question on the letter itself. And then sometimes I would actually cut their address out with scissors and tape it onto an envelope. Okay, now I have my assistant Tina do this, but she does the same tricks because her time is valuable too. And you know what? No one is offended to get back their own letter with something cut out, so long as the answer is written on it. And you know what they really love? They've got all the original context. That's why electronic mail figured that out. You reply to someone, you reply in context with the original message. They love it. Very efficient. Okay. People often ask me what is on my desk. I have an outbox, stuff that's going to eventually be taken somewhere else. It's now actually called the Tina box. I have a box of Kleenex. I teach undergraduate courses. Students come into my office and cry. It does wonders for them when I hand them a tissue and they're crying. So if you're a TA, it's like, it's not you. You're not making them cry. All right? They just do this. And they love it when I turn the box around and it has a label on it that says, official CS 645 tissue box. Right? Because then they realize, okay, this isn't just me. And setting students at ease is extremely important. I have a wall calendar for the year. I have a work order form. I don't know if I have that in the talk now, but basically something that allows me to, the CS department here made one of these up years ago, saves tremendous amount of time. You check, I need copies, how many, I need to send to somebody. Basically, you don't have to write out long hand notes. You've got sort of a quick checkbox of the things you might want done. I have a bunch of envelopes. I have a bunch of those little sticky Post-it notes, which I cannot live without anymore. And I have thank you cards. How many people here have a box of thank you cards at their desk? James, I'm not surprised. He's a good boy. Okay. Thank you cards are cool things. Yeah. If you send people thank you cards, they will decide you're not the 99% of society that's rude. Moreover, they will like you, they will remember you, and it's the right thing to do. So I send thank you cards a lot. And I usually stick my business card in them just in case they've forgotten which Randy I am. And even if you don't think that being a nice person is its own reward, the last time I did this, I got a very large consulting contract because the guy said, oh, because I had a guy on a panel, and I thanked him for just being on a panel that I chaired. Right? Thank you for taking the time out of your day. And he calls me up and he says, well, actually, I wanted to thank you back because I made some very nice contacts by coming to SIGGRAPH. Oh, and by the way, I was thinking about some of the stuff you said, and you'd completely fallen out of my mind, but we have this big consulting thing where we need a lot of help. And would you like to fly out to California in the middle of the winter and make more money than you can carry back in a wheelbarrow? And I was like, oh, all right. So even if you don't think doing the right thing is nice, thank you notes have their own rewards in and of itself. But that's not the reason to do it. The reason to do it is that very few people get thanked anymore for doing things. Sometimes I will walk into Tina's office and just say, nothing has gone wrong in the last 2 weeks. Thanks. Nothing has fallen on the floor. Nothing's caught on fire. And I appreciate that. I mean, thanking people is a really good thing. Reading pile. How many people here have a stack of stuff they're going to get around to reading? Ah, okay. How's this for advice? This is the one where the PhD advisors really hate me. Only read something if you'll be fired for not reading it. A little extreme? Maybe. It's been working for me. Okay. Now, this is very different for the grad students in the audience. If you try to keep up with every journal and every conference proceedings in your field, you will never graduate. Right? There's more stuff to read than you have hours in all of your days, even after you stop sleeping. So what I'm referring to here is trying to keep up with everything that's going on in the field. The world is too big. The world is infinite. Now, when you go into a research dig, you read like crazy. And I do think that you should do some level of reading to be current with the field. But a very common trap is to take that way too seriously. All right? I have a very simple system. When I get something that I'm going to want to scan through, I put in a box that says scan for reading. Then, when I'm in a moment in the day where I really am not very productive, I pull that down, I scan through it, identifying those articles that I think I'm going to want to read, and I put a post-it note on it, one of the little post-it notes. Then I put it in a pile that says to read. And a week later, like clockwork, I will go back and scan through again and see if those articles still look compelling to me. So it has to make it over my threshold twice a week apart. So I don't fall to the whim of either, that seemed like a good idea on Wednesday, but when I thought about it, I really don't need to invest the half an hour to read that. Notice the word invest. All right? And the other thing is that I don't fall prey to the, oh, I really don't want to do any real work, I'll read this now. All right? How about the telephone? Here's a really simple trick. If you want to keep your calls short, always stand up during the call. If you do that, your calls will be substantially shorter. Start your phone calls by announcing the goals. Hi, Sue, it's really nice to talk to you. Haven't seen you in a while. I'm calling you for the following reason. Here are the 3 things that I want to get accomplished. Ba-doom, ba-da-boom, ba-da-boom. You accomplish those things. Once you've accomplished all 3, then you can say, okay, well, that's pretty much all I needed. Thank you very much. I appreciate the time. And you're done and you're out of there. Now, if you want to talk to that person for another 20 minutes, that's your business. But don't dare take those 20 minutes out of your work budget. Those come out of your recreation budget. So now you ask yourself the question, would I rather talk to this person for 20 minutes, or would I rather go play volleyball? Go have a good meal with a friend? Get laid? Whatever your other recreational choices might be. All right? Put it in that context, 20 minutes with somebody who's really not all that interesting on the phone ain't such a great investment. All right? So think about that. It doesn't come out of your work budget. It comes out of your recreation budget. All right? Under no circumstances should you put your feet up. You're well past recreation when your feet are up. You're almost into sleep time. All right? The other great trick is have something in view that you are dying to get to. Make that person vie with the next thing you really are excited about. Right? It's very easy to stay on the phone because it's very natural. And again, I'm not suggesting you be rude to people and be an automaton. But it's very easy to take a 10-minute phone call and make it be a half an hour and realize you've had 20 minutes of chit-chat with someone you've only met once before, who isn't that interesting, that lives 3,000 miles away, and you probably will never talk to again in your life. I mean, that's just not a good investment. If it is somebody you do want to spend time with and they're in the same town, why are you doing it on the phone? Get together and have lunch or dinner. Have some quality interaction time. All right? How do you get off the phone? This is a question I'm asked over and over and over again. How do I get off the phone? All right? When you're done, get off. My favorite phrase is, well, I've really enjoyed talking to you, but I have some students waiting. I'm a professor. I assure you, somewhere there are students waiting. Okay? If you're dealing with a telemarketer and you just can't bear to be rude, which I have gotten over with telemarketers, and telemarketers are fun. You can say things like, I can't talk now. Let me call you back at home. Give me your number. And what time do you eat dinner? All right? Or if you're really in a mood, it's like, oh, I'd love to talk to you about my phone service, but first, what are you wearing? You know? That will get rid of them, trust me. And it's very entertaining. But if somebody just won't quit on you, and I do this about once every 5 years, so this is mostly in here for the gag, but you know, hang up while you're talking. This will completely confuse them. They will assume the phone has gone dead. Don't answer it if it rings for the next 20 minutes. Because no one would ever hang up on themselves, right? How self-effacing. But they'll never catch you at that one. Here's a really good one. Call people at 10 minutes to 12. Your phone calls will not last longer than 10 minutes. Because you know what? You aren't more interesting than lunch. Okay? If you go on vacation, this is mostly for the faculty, do not leave a message on your answering machine that says, hi, this is John Smith, leave a message, beep. If you're gone for 2 weeks, that's insane. All right? You come back and what do you have? A stack of messages or 14 miles of audio tape to wade through. If I'm on vacation, and I'm a big believer in vacations, okay, the whole reason I do time management is so I can take vacations, right? Did I mention I'm going to Hawaii next week? Okay. When someone calls and I am on vacation, Tina says, if this can't, or my message will say, you know, if this can't, Randy's on vacation, he's gone for a week and a half. If this can't wait, call this person right now. Otherwise, call back June 1st when Randy's back. You don't get the choice to leave me a message. Why not? Because I've gotten sick and tired of coming back and responding to a stack of messages where I spend a day calling people back and having them say, oh yeah, we already took care of that. All right, it's incredibly inefficient. In the same way, when somebody's on vacation and I call up, I don't leave a message for them. They don't need that. Time management is all about symmetry, everybody being fair to everybody else. All right? Office logistics. Make your office comfortable for you and optionally comfortable for others. No big, soft, comfy chairs. All right? You put a big couch in your office and you wonder why you can't get any work done because the laziest guy in the department is always sleeping in your office. Exactly whose fault was this, okay? And they will find the best couches, trust me. I know where all the good couches are. I have folding chairs in my office, which I am incredibly honored that Gabe has replicated. And it's really nice. If someone comes into my office, I stand up to greet them. We're both standing. This conversation is not going to last too long unless I let it. If I want the conversation to last, I perform the extremely gracious act of saying, let me create a chair for you. All right? Then they can sit down in the chair. We can talk as long as we want. All right? Sometimes I sit in the folding chair and let them have the nice padded chair. All right? Depending, of course, on like where I am in the pecking order. No, I give them the nice chair. What am I saying? Some people have a nice take on this. They cut off 2 inches on the front leg of the chair, the other chair in their office. So you can sit in that chair, but it's really hard. Another trick is you just put books in the chair so that people can't sit down, because people will not move, most people will not move books off of a chair, right? And the same people who will run out in the hall and get a chair and bring it into your office if there wasn't one, right? So you can't do anything about that. Most people won't move books off a chair, but it's a natural, gracious thing for you to just say, oh, please have a seat. What this does is it puts you in control of your time, right? Which is what it's all about, okay? People respond very strongly to these kinds of physical objects. For years, I had a sign on I had a door, and I would put signs on it like, you know, please don't interrupt, I'm very busy, or something like that. And I found that no matter what I put on the door, people would knock. I have just learned this, right? I could put a sign that says, not here. In Tahiti, people would knock. Right? It's like wet paint. Alf taught me a good trick, which is just, do not disturb doesn't work all that well, but Alf will write busy, which is very good. Busy says, all right, if you knock, you should feel guilty. All right? But the one that works really well is I cut a window in my door, big glass window, so you can normally see in. Many people observe that this is what they had to do because you know which faculty you can't trust, right? So I got a big window just so people can see that I'm not sleeping. And I had a window shade put on it. So if I'm eating lunch in my office and I don't want people to see the food flying, I will pull the shade down. And what I found is that no one will knock on a door with a shade pulled. I don't know if they think I'm really asleep, or if I'm trying hard to get fired even though I have tenure. You know, I mean, I don't know what they're thinking I'm doing, but they won't knock when a shade is down, which I find fascinating. So it's really worth cutting a window just so you can pull a shade down when you need to. All right? If you leave the shade down all the time, it becomes part of the door. The trick doesn't work. I know what you were thinking. Nice try. Okay. Scheduling yourself. You do not find times. Verbs matter. Do not find times for important things. You make it. And you typically make it by deciding not to do other things. Everything you do is an opportunity cost, and you learn to say no. No is a very good, powerful word. Okay? If you don't say no often enough, you're going to be in a lot of trouble. When someone asks you to do something, everybody in this room should be asking, or at least all the grad students and faculty should be asking, does this help me get tenure? Does this help me get my master's or my PhD? Now, help me is broadly defined. Again, I'm not urging you to become selfish. It helps you in all of these goals to be a good citizen in your community. So if somebody comes in and says, you know, I'd like you to be on the admissions committee if you're a junior faculty member, you may want to do that. That may not be an appropriate thing to say no to. It depends on the particular circumstances. You don't say, well, that won't help me get tenure, because I'll tell you this much. If you say no all the time and you're a bad citizen, it's going to be really hard to get tenure, because it's not like people don't figure that out. So learning to say no is all about not saying yes all the time by default. Don't, you know, if you've been in a poker game for more than an hour and you haven't figured out who the chump is, it's you, right? And I bet we all know that person in our department who hasn't learned to say no to anything. When we really need something done, we go talk to them. You don't want to be that person, all right? But saying no is hard, so I'll give you some gentle no's. I'll do this if nobody else steps forward. I'll be your deep fallback, but you have to keep looking for somebody, all right? This is wonderful. And really do make sure that they go out and look for that other person. And what this does, this reduces their stress level. They know they have a fallback, and they will keep looking for somebody who might be a better match or less busy, but they know they have a deep fallback. All right? I won't get into the moving party story, but it involves very heavy equipment and not enough people helping. Let's talk about interruptions. Okay? One last word on scheduling. I asked one of my undergraduates last fall to give me his schedule. And don't worry about the fact that you can't read the text there. Most undergraduates and graduate students, for that matter, have a schedule that looks like this. The only point I want to make about this is that if you can pack the courses back to back, that's good time management. And if you can't pack the courses back to back, pretend you did. So Dan Moskowitz here has a whole. What I advised him to do was to create something that he did every week from Monday at about 11:30 to about 12:30. Now in this case, because it's over lunchtime, it might be involved food. But when you have these kinds of gaps, you just find something that you do every week at that time. This doesn't become dead time where, when I asked Dan, you know, what do you do during that time? He said, no, I hang out with my friends. I said, is that a high quality use of your time? He said, no, we usually don't do anything interesting at all. I said, okay, so pick a room in the library and go to that room every day at that time as if it were a class. And once you're sitting there and you've got nothing but you and your books, you might actually study. In Dan's case, he actually did. Let's talk about interruptions. The average, people study this. People with stopwatches and video cameras study this kind of stuff. The average interruption takes 6 to 9 minutes and then takes 4 to 5 minutes to recover what you were in the middle of. And it's that last part that's the unexpected cost. So if you take 5 interruptions an hour, you got nothing else done. All right? You must reduce both the frequency and length of the interruptions. So don't run down the hall and blurt something out to somebody else. You're creating an interruption in that life. Save up. If I need to talk to Alf, what I will do is I will make a list of all the things I need to discuss with him, and then once every other day, or whenever it's convenient, I will interrupt him and we'll deal with them all. So I get rid of this overhead cost of the interruption. What's the net result? Alf and I have a better, more pleasant set of experiences because I'm not digging into his life in an unproductive, wasteful way. The exact opposite of this is, how many people here use electronic mail? Or how many people, is there anybody here who doesn't? Okay, good, 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 good. How many people here have arranged it so that when they get a new piece of electronic mail, the computer makes some noise? Good, this is getting better. You should all turn it off. You have taken a technology that is expressly designed to avoid interruptions and made it so that it is interrupting you. Turn it off. Completely undefensible. If somebody needs to reach you faster than when you get to that email, they will use the other device, which is either the phone or the door, that they can make noise. All right? Time journals. It is amazing what you will learn. This is the most humbling experience in the world. Monitor yourself in 15-minute increments for a couple of days to a couple of weeks. Update this on the fly during the day. If you wait till the end of the day, your memory will not serve you well. Because by that time, you've accumulated 8 hours or 12 hours of embarrassing data, and you won't be able to write it down. At CMU, they did a wonderful study. The students at CMU complained they're being worked to death. They gave a bunch of undergraduates beepers and journal books and said every time, and paid them, and said every time the beeper goes off, write down in the journal book what you're doing. And they broke it into about 12 categories, and they found that the average CMU undergraduate claims their courses take 80 hours a week, and their courses actually take 50. And the time journals don't lie. All right? Time journal is very simple. You just take something like this. You have a bunch of rough categories. I don't know if that's at all legible, but you get the idea. Right? At this time, I was doing one of these things, and here's some notes I made. Just write down where your time is going. Almost no one in this room will do this. Those who do will succeed. It'll shave at least 6 months off a 6-year PhD, but you don't have to do it. You didn't hear it from me. All right? Gathering data, as any good scientist knows, is not enough. You've got to analyze it and use it. Once you've got the time journal written down, you ask, what am I doing that doesn't need to be done? What am I doing that could be done by someone else? What am I doing that could be done more efficiently? And here's the great one. What am I doing that's wasting other people's time? All right? It's all about all of us doing it together. All right? Let's talk about delegation. No one is an island. Everybody in the modern world has to accomplish things working with other people. And this is mostly for the faculty members and graduate students in the audience. First off, if it's done right, delegation is not dumping. I'm a faculty member. I have rank over you. I don't want to do this. I'll make you do it. That's dumping. That's not delegation. In particular, if you give somebody the responsibility and the accountability to get something done, okay, you've got to give them the authority to make the decisions. Do not say, you are responsible for this, and your head is on the platter if it goes wrong. But you can't make any decisions without clearing them with me. That's a crap way to delegate to somebody. That's a great way in the business world to have your workers walk. Because nobody wants to live for very long with all of the responsibility and none of the authority. So if I give somebody a job, I give them the chance to screw it up or do really well, and I'll work with them afterwards either way. And I will give them the budget. I will not tell somebody, you are in charge of running this event, but you don't have the authority to spend any money without coming and clearing it with me. No, no, no. It doesn't work that way. If you give somebody a job, you give them all the aspects of the job. Treat your people well. It's only symbolic, but we need to vacuum the lab. I come in and vacuum it if we have a big demo coming up. All right? Do the very worst job yourself. All right? And if you're a faculty member, God, the grad students and secretaries are your lifeline. Treat these people with the respect they deserve. These people are really important, and they work hard, really hard. And to just treat them as something in the environment like a piece of furniture is criminal. All right? Challenge people. How much do you delegate? You delegate until they complain. Not in terms of raw workload, blah, 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 blah. In terms of how much can they handle? Let them grow. Give them challenges you're not sure they can do, and tell them, this may be outside of your comfort zone. Come and work with me when you're not sure what to do. As Judge Wapner would say, get it in writing. Email is wonderful. Every grad student, after every meeting with your advisor, should send a real quick, one-paragraph summary to your advisor of what you think happened in that meeting and what you're responsible for by the next meeting. Not because you're trying to create a paper trail, you just want to be clear. It's amazing how you can have a meeting a week later and both people are saying, I thought you were going to do that. If it's an email, it's clearly spelled out who's going to do what by when. All right? Give people objectives, not procedures. Tell them what you want to have accomplished, the end result, and let them surprise you with all the clever ways to do it you never thought of. One of the joys of delegation is finding out how much cleverer your subordinates are than you are. Right? That's what I love. And that's a great thing about grad students. You're all incredibly clever, and undergraduates, God. Also, always tell people the importance of this task. When I send email to Tina or to any of my students, every task has a number, 1 through 9, next to it, so they know, without having to come back to me, how does this rank in importance relative to other things they may be working on. Huge time saver. Okay? Beware upward delegation. I gave a student something once to do, and he came back a day later and explained to me why he couldn't possibly do it, and it was a set of readings or something, and he went to hand it back to me, and I just did this. I said, Rich, let's talk about it. All the time, my hands behind my back. The body language is pretty clear. Those readings were not coming back into my possession. So he could drop them on the floor and walk out, because he wasn't in a chair, remember? Right? Or he could sort of go, okay, I will stop extending them and accept the fact that this is my responsibility. All right? Don't let people give you stuff back. There are wonderful upward delegators in the world. All right? Beware the secretary who teaches the faculty member in excruciating detail how to run the photocopier. Now, what motivation would there be there? Let me think about that. All right? Reinforce behavior you want repeated. If somebody does a good job, say thank you. Take them out to dinner. Do something nice for them. Okay? And be ignorant. The reason I haven't run the photocopier is I don't know how. You have to type in some 6-digit code. I never learned it. Bummer. Right? In 5 years at Virginia, the 5 years we had a fax machine, as I recall, I never faxed anything. And the one time I got screwed, because it was a Saturday, I'd done a time management meltdown. You know what I did? I went to Kinko's and I paid $7. And I said, fax this for me. I didn't know how to work the machine where I work. And they looked at me and they said, that's expensive. I said, oh no, I've saved a lot of money by not faxing all the other ones. Okay? Meetings. The average executive spends 40% or more. If you're going to have a meeting, lock the door and unplug the phone. Don't let interruptions come in. If there are 4 of you in the meeting, that's 4 times as wasteful for the interruption to come in. I don't go to meetings that last more than 1 hour. I have yet to find them that are productive. That's different than a retreat. But I mean, a business meeting that lasts more than an hour is usually wasteful. I don't go to meetings where there aren't agendas whenever I can help it. If it's a brainstorming meeting, the agenda is to brainstorm. But if there's a standing weekly meeting of the blah, blah, blah committee, if you don't have an agenda, have a good meeting. All right? End of the meeting, 1-minute minutes. Who is responsible for what, by when? Okay? One word on technology. Okay, electronic mail, you all know about. Are Virgo and Leo still the things in place here? I haven't been in the library now in 4 or 5 years, but I still get everything. One of my PhD students who reviewed this talk with me yesterday said, oh, tell any computer scientists in the audience about the ACM Digital Library. It costs $15 to join, and you make the money back in the first 48 hours. Almost all of the text of all of the articles in all the ACM major publications are online. You can get them at your desk. You don't have to go to the library. Huge time saver when you're doing a research dig. All right? Last one, speed dialing speakerphone. I used to get so frustrated when I would be on hold. And you know what? I just don't worry about it anymore. Because when somebody puts me on hold, I'm on a speakerphone, I'm listening to Girl from Ipanema, and I'm working. Right? And the great part about my phone is when I'm done working, or when they finally come in and say, hello, can I help you? I say, yes, hi, my name is Randy Pausch. I'm calling from Carnegie Mellon University. I've been on hold for 4.5 minutes. Not threatening, not confrontational, not angry, just for your information in case you're tracking this. I get the best service in the world. Because everybody comes off saying, wow, I'd be hacked if I were on hold for 4.5 minutes, right? You know? And this guy was pleasant to me. He just let me know informationally, right? And I get the best service in the world. And I get to listen to Girl from Ipanema while I get work done. It's great. I have no radio, so, okay? General advice, kill your television. Get serious, right? If you want to get your degree done or you want to get tenure, what the hell are you doing watching TV? Average American child watches more television, more hours of television than hours in school. That's an opportunity cost for our society. I could get on that soapbox for forever. Turn money into time. If you are a junior faculty member with kids, anytime you can pay someone to mow your lawn, wash your clothes, do anything that is a mundane task. Now that's different than saying, oh, I don't have time to play with my kid, I'll pay somebody to play with my kid. No, 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 you don't go that far with it. But anything that is no quality of life improver, where you can trade money for time, do it. Because tenure is blood sport. If you're in your 2nd year and junior faculty member, you have no idea what blood sport it is. Every faculty member I ever knew who didn't get tenure said the same thing. I had no idea. I thought I was doing okay. No, it's blood sport, and you find out the hard way. What I tell my students is, when I'm done with all this about packing more into your day, the single most important thing is eat and sleep and exercise really, really well. All right? If you don't eat and sleep and exercise well, you just get sick and tired and hungry. And that's no good, because you can't work that way. The best advice is the simplest. Okay? Last slide, general advice. Never, ever break a promise. Now, I've told you about deciding not to do things. If I have told Kim that I will have something done by tomorrow at 3 p.m., then that is my highest priority, because that's my integrity. And nothing is a higher priority than my honor. Now, if it turns out that my mom died, and I have to go to the funeral, I will go to Kim and I will say, Kim, I've got a terrible problem. I don't think I'm going to be able to get this thing done for you tomorrow. My mom just died. And Kim will probably say, okay. But she died last week. I'm getting tired of it. No. No. Go to people. I mean, the mom dying is the extreme one. But if you're just in a terrible time bind, you have mismanaged your time and you don't think you can fill it out, go to somebody, give them as much warning as possible. If you come to me at 11 o'clock on an 11:30 deadline and say, I'm not going to be able to get it done, I'm hacked because I got no fallback position. If you come to me Tuesday morning and say, this thing that's due Thursday at 3, I'm not sure, I'm really in a time bind. Is there any way you can help me out with this? I can say, no problem, happens to us all. Thanks for letting me know. I have somebody else who can take care of this. Thanks for giving me the 2.5 days notice. If you give your advisor lead time, your advisor will not be hacked. If you come in when it's supposed to be due, and that's the first time your advisor hears it, that's bad. All right? Recognize that if you don't have time to do it right, then you don't have time to do it wrong. If you're going to spend 3 hours on a 6-hour task and find out that it's all crap and someone else has to redo it anyway from scratch, you've wasted 3 hours and made somebody else angry. Do it well enough. The flip side of that is most things are pass-fail. Once it's good enough, quit working on it, move on to the next thing. All right? Last thing, and I will close the talk with this, the most important thing in the world is a feedback loop. Again, I come back to my mentor, Al. And I hope that to some degree I played the same role to Gabe. You've got to find somebody in your life who's more senior in the environment, the bigger gorilla who's been in the cage for a while, who is brutally honest. Brutally honest, who will pull no punches, who will tell you, you know what, you really screwed that up. Not to beat on you, but to just say, I am willing to be socially awkward, which is very hard to tell somebody they've done poorly, and they will tell you what you did wrong. If you find that person and you treat them very well and are very appreciative, they will help guide you through the rapids you will have to negotiate. And these people are worth their weight in gold. And if you're lucky in a department with 30 faculty members, if you're a junior faculty member, you'll find 1 or 2. Okay? For grad students, it's a little bit easier to find someone who will be honest with you in the senior PhDs or the faculty. It's a little bit harder to find someone who can observe you as well. So that's a tough trade-off. But whatever you can do, find those people, reward them, and do the best you can to get as much advice as you can from them. With that, I have run 4 minutes over, and I apologize, and I'll take any questions you have.
Randy, do you have anything for staff folks, like secretaries, like the people that get dumped on?
Yes. The dump-ees. Clear communication. Train the person above you to do some of the stuff in here. So get them to always give you a relative priority of something so that in the eventuality, which will always happen, that not everything gets done, the things that don't get done are less important. Okay? Hi, wonderful to see you. Okay, I understand. So a lot of the stuff you basically invert from the position, and the smartest secretaries in the world have sent their bosses to time management seminars. Right? It's hard for them to do that. It requires a special relationship. But sitting down and talking about procedure and process, and the other thing is that saving up interruptions and then going with a whole basket of interruptions, and then your boss will slowly figure out how to do that too. If you put a box in your boss's office, like the Tina box in my office, and say, when you got something for me, just put it in the box, and twice a day I'll come down to your office and take it and take care of all that stuff, my God, your boss thinks you're great. You're coming down to get the work. What you're really doing is saying, I'll come twice a day when it's good for me and create an interruption, rather than you coming into my office 12 times. Everybody comes out ahead. There must be other questions. Otherwise, everybody here is here just waiting to hear what the other people's questions were.
Anything else?
Yes, in the back.
You mentioned the idea of not number one.
Yeah.
Could you repeat the question?
Yeah, I will.
How do you deal with email messages that we need to respond to? You mentioned not having all the files.
Right. The question is, how do you, given that I say touch each piece of paper once, how do you deal with all the email messages that come in? Philosophically, it's exactly the same thing. I have electronic mail that comes in, and I have paper that comes in. And with paper, I touch each one once, and I either deal with it and respond to it, and it's out in an outbox somehow, Or I realize I don't have time, I put an entry in my to-do list, and I save it in a file cabinet. And I do exactly the same thing with electronic mail. The thing comes in, I either respond right then, in place, or I save that message somewhere in my hierarchical file system on my PC, and I put a separate one-line entry, which may name that file and give me a little context note in my to-do list. And the thing about that is that way I can put it in my to-do list and sort it by those little numbers next to it. Okay? It's very hard to sort the mail because mail programs aren't really designed to be to-do lists with priorities. I wish they were. People are working on that. They're getting closer. They're mostly just designed by squirrels. So the other great trick, and I should actually put this in the talk proper because I just remembered it. I have every piece of electronic mail I have ever sent or received starting 3 years ago. And that will be true for the rest of my career. I just log it all. And I don't put it into folders. If I put something in a folder, I'm making a copy. There's still the time-ordered stream of every piece of email I ever get, every piece of email I ever send. Why? This morning, I'm trying to remember what time is the talk. I know that I know because I once knew. I cannot forget. I just search, and I know that Gabe sent me the mail, so I search for Gabe's name, or in this case I remembered it was in MEC 205, and I searched for MEC 205, and there it comes up. Because you know what? My computer can search through 3 years of email really fast. And it can search through the last month of email in under a second or two. And it's almost always within that last month where I'm looking. But the key thing is that I never lose the information, and I wish I had a nickel for every time that one bailed me out. People say, I don't have space on my computer. Buy another computer. Right? Do you guys have any idea how cheap computers are right now? Right? My dad has Web TV, which is a wonderful product. And he said, how come they aren't charging me to store all my email messages? And I sat down with him and I said, well, let's say you typed 8 hours a day for the next 10 years. How much disk cost would it be to the Web TV network to store all that? And it's $10. Now, of course, at the end of those 10 years, it will be a nickel. Right? The storage is free, and if it costs you $200 to buy another hard drive for your PC or whatever it is, then you just do it. Because you will save more than $200 by having every piece of email you ever sent or received, because sooner or later, that will save you a trip somewhere. And the moment you save a trip, you're just way ahead. It also just allows me to work differently. There's no stress in my life. I know if I've ever seen the information, I still have it. And logging all your incoming and outgoing email is a simple thing to do and just worth its weight in gold. I can't convince most of the undergraduates to do it. They aren't old enough. There's certain lessons where you have to have been burned to realize the value. It's very hard to sell insurance to a 19-year-old. Right? They're bulletproof. It's also very hard to explain to them that driving 100 miles an hour is bad, that drinking is bad, that having unprotected sex is bad. 19-year-olds are bulletproof. They also don't like to log their email. All these things bother me. Okay?
Delete the trash email?
No. I never. Now, if somebody sends me a 3 megabyte attachment of a video of their dog barking, okay, mostly because the mail program separates that out anyway, and it's an extra step for me to save it, then I don't. But if the mail program left those 3 megabytes in the general stream, I would probably save it under the same philosophy. Right? I mean, storage is getting cheap. I just bought a laptop that has 16 gigabytes. All right? I mean, it's insane. Yeah?
I'm confused because I thought by logging you mean save you to folder.
No, I mean, when I read it and then I delete it, the action of deleting it appends it to a log, which is just a file of all the email I've ever gotten. I don't mean saving it to a folder. I do that too sometimes. When I save it to a folder, it is a copy, but the log is still there. And the log is, other than append, it's read-only. I can't go in and delete entries in that log. If you've ever sent me email, it is there in order.
You can do that through any email.
Almost, well, look at it this way. If your email system doesn't let you do that, you should change your email system in order to get one that has that feature. I believe so vehemently about this. Yeah?
I don't even delete trash mail. I mentioned like junk mail because the action of deleting it, remembering to delete it, actually to me is more expensive than the computation in terms of overhead when I read than ignoring it and just letting it go to the wall.
That's an excellent observation. Psychologists call this cognitive load. Anytime I can keep from making a decision is wonderful. In the same way, anyway, I have a bad memory. Anytime I can keep from remembering something. Now, this was bad because I had to get up very early this morning, which I thoroughly detest. But I had a 7:15 flight. And last night, I was deathly concerned that I would forget my laptop computer, which sits on a desk. And what I did was I took my car keys out and threw them on top of the laptop computer right before I went to sleep, figuring that now I can only get as far as the car without it. Right? The other trick I will do is I'll put the laptop leaned up against the door. Any little trick you can come up with that requires you to not think, to not remember, to not make a decision is all to the better. Yeah, it's an excellent point. I'm glad you reminded me of that. Yeah. Oh. Okay, well, already, okay, what I tell people, it's a little bit like dieting, right? If somebody comes to me and they say, I weigh 400 pounds and I want to weigh 150, how can I get there in a week? I say, the question is ill-formed, right? I can teach you about dieting, I can teach you about lifestyle, I can teach you about exercise, I can teach you how you can get to the right place. And in particular, if somebody comes to me and says, I weigh 150 pounds, I'd like to stay 150 pounds, that's an easy problem, right? So time management is a little bit like dieting. There are no quick fixes, there are only long-term fixes. So the generic answer to how do I get ahead of the curve is somebody cares whether or not you do those things. So my first advice is, if no one cares whether or not these things happen, they're not important. Right? That's polishing the banister. If someone cares, you go to the people who care and you ask them, how important is this? I've got a whole bunch of things. Now, the somewhat pissy thing that is taught in some time management classes is when your boss hands you a task and you say, okay, I can do this for you, but which of the other 7 things you've given me am I not to do now? Those are the secretaries you fire, because that's confrontational, it's pissy, and it's the implied presumption that I'm always running at 100% and everything you give me is an onerous task. Much better, and notice I'm asking the same question, much better to say to them, okay, I've got a lot of things on my plate, and I'm really terribly afraid that I may not be able to get them all done in the time frames you need. Can we take 2 minutes, sit down, and you give me a prioritization so that if something has to slip, it's going to be something where it's not going to have a lot of impact on you, because I don't want you to be hurt if I can't get everything done. Okay? Notice how I just said the same thing 2 different ways? Go to the people that you are getting these tasks done for and find out how important they are. Okay? Because sometimes if you go to somebody, they'll say, okay, if you're really overburdened, I can take that one back and give it to somebody else or do it myself. Right? People are incredibly reasonable. But again, no one is reasonable the day it's due or the night before. Everyone is reasonable a week before, depending on the granularity of the task. And if you've agreed to be the program chair in a conference, and it's a year before the conference, and you call up the general chair and say, I realize this is a huge commitment, but here's the problem. I don't think I'm going to be able to do this very well, and is there anybody else? You don't unilaterally declare I'm not going to do it, but you say, here's the issue. And, is there some way we can deal with this? So go back to the people who care. Yeah, okay, good. I'll let you do this. Yeah.
I'm actually wondering whether or not you give extensions to undergraduates.
I'm actually wondering whether I'm being filmed in 3D. There are 2 cameras here. For all of you in stereo land, okay. Do I give extensions to undergraduates? I always hate the people who ask the nasty questions that are, do you put your money where your mouth is? Yes and no, depends on the context. What I normally do, well, first off, I never get into the piecemeal business. I never, ever, ever have an undergraduate come to me and say, I'd like an extension on this assignment. Right? Now, if you've got a real serious thing, death, as they used to say on the show MASH, death in the family is always good, right? I mean, if you have a real serious issue, then of course you come to me. And when I was at UVA, there was a very good support mechanism that isn't mirrored at CMU, where you would go to a dean, and the dean would make the judgment call, and then the dean would send a memo to all the faculty members. I actually strongly preferred that because it puts somebody in a standard position of control who decided how sick was sick enough. I also like the fact that the 6 kids would all go to see the associate dean instead of me. So like the associate dean has every virus known to mankind. But so in that case, I would push it off. But presuming we're not talking about death in the family, I had the flu, went to the hospital, stuff like that, students come to me and say, essentially, they never say it this way, but by the time they leave my office, they have. They say, I didn't manage my time well. No, they don't get an extension for that. Not at all.
It's amazing how many grandmas die right before the term product.
Yeah. And what I do, so the real answer to your question is, when you walk into my class, any class I ever teach, The first day I present you with absolute organization, because the best way I can evidence time management is to walk into the first class with a syllabus, with an idea of what's going to happen. This is hard for me because I tend to teach a lot of experimental courses. So what I come in with is, here's the best I can tell you right now, because we're doing virtual reality, so we're making this up as we go. But if I'm teaching intro programming, I'll come in and tell you when all the assignments are going to be. And I'll say, this is time management to help you. You can plan around it. No surprises here. The other thing I will tell you is what the policy is. Sometimes when I teach courses, I will say the policy is, you can't hand it in late. You give me what you have on the due date, and then you move on. And I say to them, I always express it why it's good for them. I say, the reason I do that is I've seen students snowball. Much better to not complete that assignment and take your lumps, learn your lesson, you didn't manage your time well, and then start with a fresh slate on assignment 2. That's good in the case where the assignments don't strictly build on each other. Okay? The other one I do is I say, the assignment is due on this class. Most of my classes meet Tuesday, Thursday. I tend to make the assignments due on Thursday, and the policy is you can turn it in one grade late, one class late, 5 days, including a weekend, and weekends are precious to undergrads. So you can turn it in Tuesday for a full letter grade penalty that's not negotiable. And then after that, I don't want to see it. And students who turn the first assignment in late routinely get invited to my office for the time management talk. Because I say to them, Bucky, we're 7 days into the semester, and you're 5 days behind. You know, this isn't going to be better on day 52 when you're 48 days behind. All right? So I basically ask them, how many classes are you taking? What's your load? I will make them do a time log. All right? And so I will talk with them expressly about time management, but I do believe that the most important thing that most undergraduates learn in college is that there are indeed consequences to their actions. And it is first off a shame that most of them manage to get to college without learning that. But I do believe there are consequences to your actions, and that the worst thing you can do is enable bad time management by letting somebody say, oh, I just screwed up, I didn't manage my time well, and then saying, okay, well then you can have an extension. There's also the fundamental basic issue of fairness. Other students in the class will resent that that student implicitly got more time. The other thing I do in all my courses is you never have gaps. There is always an assignment out and due. And at the beginning of the semester, the students hate it. They say, damn it, I never get a break. This guy Pausch is always busting my chops. I never get a day off in his class. And I say to him, well, let's talk about it. I could do it the other way, and I'll give him the choice. I'll say, the assignment's going to take you 2 weeks. It's structured that way. I give you a 3-week window to do it. Would you rather I wait 7 days and then give it to you as a 2-week assignment where you only have 2 weeks? Or wouldn't you rather I give it to you in the 3-week window where you have all the flexibility? Your call. And then they think about it and they realize, you know, the truth of the matter is, he gives us 3 weeks to do this, and I never do anything the first week. But at least I do know that it's coming and it's in the back of my mind and I'm thinking about it. And I do remember that one time I did start early, and that did work out well, didn't it? You know, so those are my philosophies, is always have an assignment out and explain to them it's for flexibility. The other great thing is email. I'm on the road so much that I can tell my students, you know, I may be out of town 1/3 of the calendar days this semester, but you'll get email responses from me typically within 4 or 5 hours, even if I'm, you know, in Germany. So I have big phone bills, but my students can always reach me, because I find they're very sensitive to latency. Right? If you have to wait 3 hours to get an answer to a quick question, then that professor is unapproachable. The professor is on the road 50% of the days, but you can always get a question in, and you have to wait 3 days to see him in person, but he'll make that appointment with you. That professor is incredibly approachable. So email is a big, big weapon there. Okay. Yeah.
I'm with ITC, and we have to answer a lot of consult mail. I find that I over-research my answers, as it were, and wonder if you have some suggestion as to a method for getting a reasonable answer to the person without my wasting a lot of time trying to get it exactly right.
Oh, that's a really good one. And I want to say that I used to bitch about ITC, and now that I'm at Carnegie Mellon, you guys are great. I'm at Computer U, and I can't get a 56K modem line into the university. I mean, their standard response is, if you send mail for help at CMU, they promise to acknowledge receipt of the mail within 3 working days. I'm like, this is crap. So, and the truth of the matter is, what happens is, They also have a telephone hotline, and they trust their user community to do everything through the slow mechanism except the stuff that is on fire, and they trust us to be responsible about using the phone when we need it quicker. And after you get over that realization that you're the sort, then it's not so bad. But it drove me crazy when I thought I only had the email. So I had to learn all the mechanism, in fairness to the CMU people. Yeah, you have a tough problem because you're working in the dark. You're shooting at phantoms, and the people asking the questions have wide varieties and backgrounds. And I don't have a lot of silver bullets for you other than to say, don't tell me because this is a salary thing, but think about what is the average salary of the person answering that email, and then ask the question, could an undergraduate do it? Okay, I mean, a lot of that can be pre-filtered. And the truth of the matter is, on this and every other campus I know of, a whole lot of the real hot knowledge is in the responsible juniors and seniors because they just love to play and tinker and they know about the latest stuff and they spread the word. So in fact, both here and at CMU, when I really wanted to find something out, depending on what it was, I was much more likely to go into the public cluster and just say, excuse me, I have a question. Any hot shots here be able to help me with this question? Rather than calling the official people. That's because the official people have other jobs. They just can't play and learn about all the latest packages and tweaks and tricks. So what I would say is upfront filter. The other thing is try and train your user base, and this is a tough one, that this kind of information will help us a lot. And the other one is that if you make it a web form instead of email, you can make it much less painful for them to answer the set of questions. Because a lot of times, I don't know about you, but I would get email when I was in a position like that, and I wouldn't even know if this was a Macintosh or a Windows user. That makes it really hard to debug, right? And then I'd say back, are you using a Macintosh or Windows? And they'd say, I'm not sure. It's a green monitor. Right, so if you have a web form and there's only two choices and it won't accept it till they've picked one, they'll usually ask somebody else. So turn the global problem into a local problem whenever possible. Is the easy answer, but you're in a tough position. I don't have any great tricks for you there.
Anything else? Thanks for coming.
Okay, I'll still be up here. Very fun. Thank you very much for letting me come back and do this. It's always great fun.